Well, in both of our plays, Act 2 opens with a monologue. What we have here are the female monologues from each work. On your left, you see the one from Alex Taylor's play, The Argument. And on your right, you see the one from Trifecta's play, The Debate.
Why were you looking at these monologues in particular?
Well, Act 1 of both plays ends with the audience choosing between two options. These monologues are how they learn the outcome of that vote. They set the tone for the entire rest of the plays.
So, Dr. Rosenthal, what did you find when you compared these monologues?
Well, I know the text in these original scripts is a little difficult to read. So, to make things easier, I've removed the stage directions, changed the font size, and changed the font itself. But the words, the characters' words, are exactly the same as in the original scripts.
Your Honor, may I approach with smaller copies of these demonstratives as well?
Yes, thank you. You anticipate the judge's poor eyesight.
I tried. That's the one on the left right here.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then these are 3 copies of the one on Dr. Rosenthal's left,
Thank
on the
you.
other side. And then, if I may proffer for the record,
Certainly.
quickly, I'm just going to give you smaller copies of the next diagram that he's going to be uncovering as well.
That's fine.
We'll lay the appropriate foundation when we uncover that.
I appreciate it. Thank you. You can proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Dr. Rosenthal, what are we looking at here once again?
Well, like I said, these are versions of the scripts where the stage directions have been removed and the text size has been increased. But the characters' words are exactly the same as in the original.
But, Doctor, why are the colors different in this one?
Well, that's to help us see the similarities. Let's look at this monologue from the debate. The words in black here are exactly the same as ones found in Miss Taylor's play, where the words in orange are unique to Trifecta.
So you mentioned something called shared words. What evidence of those did you find in these monologues?
Well, as you can see, there are quite a few. The 2 most notable instances were the 17 consecutive shared words that opened both monologues, starting with "after everything we've been through," and a sequence of 21 consecutive shared words near the end, starting with "how thankful I am for your support."
So, Doctor, what came next in your analysis?
That was something called textual substitution.
And what's that?
It's when we see slightly different words being used to convey the same basic meaning.
What evidence of textual substitution did you find here?
Well, again, there are a number of examples. The first instance we see comes right after these first highlighted portions. The only difference in wording there is between "all right" and "already good." And the second comes right before these second highlights. The only difference there is between "I can't even tell y'all" and "I can't even tell everyone here."
So, Doctor, you also mentioned something called shared mistakes. What are those?
Well, there are almost an infinite number of mistakes we can make when writing. It's why I tell my students to read their papers aloud before turning them in. But when I get 2 papers with the exact same mistake, made in the exact same place, that's a textbook sign of copying.
Did you find any of those shared mistakes here?
I did. Let me show you. And now what we've done here is remove all of the non-shared words. The ones that are left on this form, the ones you see here, are identical in both scripts.
Just for the record, Your Honors, this is the document that we will be referring to that's in completely black text with brackets and ellipses within the brackets.
Thank you.
Of course. So, Dr. Rosenthal, what did you find here?
Well, that shared mistake is right over here near the bottom. Again,
Gentlemen, Your Honor, lack of personal knowledge. May I explain?
Yes.
Your Honor, we believe that what Dr. Rosenthal is about to testify to is a portion of this text that says, "knowing that no matter happened." Now, Dr. Rosenthal is testifying that this is a mistake. While we have a good faith basis to believe that in Trifecta's play, it actually wasn't a mistake and was intentionally put in there. Therefore, for this doctor to testify that that was a mistake is outside of his personal knowledge.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Certainly.
First and foremost, may I process?
Yes.
Dr. Rosenthal is about to tell you that grammatically, the sentence that opposing counsel just referred to is incorrect. He's not opining into whether the author of the monologues actually intended to make a mistake or not. He's just telling you that grammatically this sentence is incorrect, and he's certainly qualified to do so. He's been a professor of English and theater history for over 20 years.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Certainly.
Your Honor, the word that this expert witness has used throughout all this testimony so far has been mistake. That goes to the state of mind of the person who wrote it, that they didn't intend to write that specific thing. If he was just going to testify that's grammatically incorrect pursuant to the standard rules of English, we'd have no objections. But to say that's a mistake is inappropriate.
May I respond?
On cross-examination, you can clarify this issue. I'm going to overrule the objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
So, Dr. Rosenthal, where did you see those shared mistakes?
That was right over here near the bottom. Again, I know it might be a little difficult to read, so to make things easier, I've highlighted the portion that we're going to be focusing on.
What did you find, Doctor?
Look at this phrase. I'll read it aloud. It says, knowing that no matter happened. It sounds wrong. Grammatically, it should be knowing that no matter what happened. And that exact same word is missing in the exact same place in both plays.
Thank you, Dr. Rosenthal. You can sit back down. Dr. Rosenthal, what, if any, evidence did you find that Alex Taylor copied Trifecta Entertainment's play?
None. Quite to the contrary, the evidence that I reviewed indicated Miss Taylor copyrighted her play in 2013, August or June specifically, more than a year before Trifecta began working on their script.
Objection, Your Honor, misleading. May I explain?
Yes.
Your Honor, the question as phrased was what evidence do you have that Alex Taylor wrote this play before Trifecta Entertainment? It was about when they wrote them. This witness didn't testify to when the plays were copyrighted, but the question talked about when they were written. The expert's answer talked about when they were copyrighted, and it's misleading to the jury to conflate the two.
May I respond, Your Honor? First of all, that's not the question I asked Dr. Rosenthal. I just asked him what, if any, evidence did he find that Alex Taylor copied Trifecta Entertainment's play. I never mentioned the word right, and I didn't intend or imply that word either.
Your Honor, may I respond? Your Honor, it's outside this expert witness's personal knowledge exactly when Trifecta Entertainment started writing their play or any of the preliminary outlines or drafts. He's not inside Matt Garcia's head. He's not inside Jesse Park's head. Therefore, for him to testify as to when they started writing this play is inappropriate. He can talk about copyright dates because those are factual issues.
May I respond, Your Honor?
I'm going to sustain the objection as being non-responsive, and so why don't you ask your next question, and then, I'm not suggesting you should move on, but I think it was non-responsive.
Move to strike.
And the motion is granted. It's stricken.
So, Dr. Rosenthal, do you know when Alex Taylor copyrighted her play?
That was July of 2013.
Do you know when or if Trifecta started writing theirs?
I do. That was after August of 2014.
Objection,
Thank
Your Honor,
you.
outside the scope of this witness's personal knowledge.
May I respond to that, Your Honor?
Yes.
First of all, Dr. Rosenthal just testified that he reviewed both Matt Garcia and Jesse Park's affidavits, and all of this information is contained within those affidavits. Thus, it's well within the scope of Dr. Rosenthal to testify as to what he learned from Matt Garcia and Jesse Parks.
Well, the answer did sound like it lacked foundation. Maybe you can clarify where the foundation comes from.
Absolutely, Your Honor.
Motion to strike until that foundation is laid.
It's stricken.
So, Dr. Rosenthal, what affidavits did you review for this case?
Those of Alex Taylor, Jesse Parks, and Matt Garcia.
Now, from those affidavits, did you learn anything about when the debate was written?
Sure. I learned that Trifecta began working on the script for the debate in August of 2014, and their copyright is for September of 2015.
Thank you, Dr. Rosenthal. No further questions.
Thank you. Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Before I begin, may I rearrange the demonstratives?
You may.
Would you like me to help or take them down?
I'll be using just this demonstrative, I believe. Once I can check what it is. Yes, but if
Can I
you
take
wouldn't
these
mind
down?
deconstructing, that would be
Sure,
fantastic.
I can take them down.
If I could leave these on council table.
That's fine.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
You may proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Doctor.
Afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm not bad. Thank you.
Doctor, you don't do so much expert witnessing work these days, do you?
Sure, that's right.
You actually haven't testified as an expert witness since you got tenure as a professor, right?
Something like that, right?
That was 15 years ago.
Yes, that's correct.
And Doctor, the reason you don't testify as an expert so much anymore is that you believe it can sort of burn bridges in the industry, right?
Well, sure, that's a possibility.
That it could hurt your career prospects, right?
Again, that's a possibility, sure.
But Doctor, you came out of that 15-year hiatus of expert witnessing just to do this case, right?
Right, sir. With such flagrant instances of copying, it's important to get to the truth.
Doctor, wouldn't you say there's a little bit of a personal incentive for you in this case?
No, I absolutely wouldn't.
Well, Doctor, in your own words, if you could help show that Trifecta Entertainment stole one of their interns' plays, it wouldn't hurt to be the journalist who helped do that, right?
No, those aren't my words.
Doctor, it's not your words that if you could show that Trifecta Entertainment stole one of their students' or interns' plays, it couldn't hurt to be the journalist who helped uncover that?
Right, it would be nice to get to the truth of the matter, but I'm not trying to prove that Trifecta stole any specific play, sir.
Doctor, I just want to be clear for the record, those were your words.
Right, like I said, you misstated my actual words, sir.
All right, Doctor, well, let's talk about the work you did in this case. You analyzed Jesse Parks and Trifecta's play, The Debate, right?
You're right, I read the complete scripts of both plays.
You analyzed Alex Taylor's play, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Of course, as an expert witness, you were paid for your time to do this, right?
Of course.
About $30,000 in whole, right?
Sure, something like that.
And Doctor, your ultimate goal was to determine whether they were so similar that one was probably copied from the other, right?
That's correct.
The thing is, Doctor, even if one was copied from the other, you can't tell us who copied who, can you?
Not definitively, no, you're right.
For example, Doctor, you're aware that both plays have an act one that culminates in an argument, right?
I am aware of that.
You don't know who thought of that first, Trifecta Entertainment or Alex Taylor, do you?
You're correct.
You notice that both plays have an audience-voted intermission, right?
Sure, that's right as well.
You don't know who thought of that first, Trifecta Entertainment or Alex Taylor.
That's right, sir.
You notice that both plays have these two diverging act twos, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And again, Doctor, you don't know who came up with that first, do you?
You're right, sir. I don't know when the ideas were generated. All I know is when the plays were written.
Exactly, Doctor. That's quite interesting that you say that you don't know when the ideas were generated. Because on direct examination, you talked about when the full drafts of the plays were written, right?
Sure, I mentioned that.
But you don't know exactly when Trifecta Entertainment started working on their drafts, do you?
No, I would disagree with that.
You don't know exactly when they started outlining their ideas, do you?
You're right about that, sure.
So as far as you know, they could have started outlining their ideas before Alex Taylor started writing her play.
Right. Mac Garcia didn't indicate anything like that in her statement, but it's a possibility.
Since she didn't indicate anything like that in her statement, she did say that she started working on an outline back in 2012, didn't she?
That's what she claimed, sure.
And Doctor, you also talked a lot about these monologues, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Specifically, this demonstrative shows all the words in Trifecta's monologue and all the words in Alex Taylor's monologue that are word for word the same, right?
Yes, sir. That's right.
So to be clear, Doctor, these are the words that are the same. Trifecta's monologue had some other words sort of put in these blanks, right?
I'm not quite sure what you mean here.
The black words are the words that are the same. The red indicates where Trifecta put in some other words.
Yes,
right?
I understand. You're correct.
In the same way, the right could also represent where Miss Taylor put in other words. Right?
Sure, that's right.
But this doesn't tell us anything about who wrote those monologues first, does it?
Right, it shows that the words are exactly the same, not who wrote which words first.
And Doctor, you mentioned on direct examination that Trifecta copyrighted their play after Miss Taylor, right?
Yes, that's correct.
But Doctor, you'd agree that for a big production company like Trifecta, it can often take a few years between the first instance when someone thinks of an idea and when they actually copyright and produce a show, right?
I couldn't opine one way or another on that, sir.
Well, Doctor, you'd agree with me. You're an expert in theater, right?
Sure.
It can sometimes take playwrights a long time between when they come up with an idea.
Question calls, as phrase, calls for speculation, Your Honor.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Sure.
He's an expert in theater. He testified a lot on direct examination of exactly how much background he has in this. I'm just asking him if in his experience, if he's found that often playwrights take a long time between when they first conceive of an idea and when their final work is published.
May I respond?
Sure.
The fact that opposing counsel is asking this witness about playwrights taking an awful long time before they think of an idea and actually publish something, this witness can't testify as to the mindset of those playwrights. That's speculative.
This is a very savvy expert. I'm going to let him answer the question.
All right.
Doctor, you'd agree with me that it can often take a long time between when a playwright first thinks of an idea and when they actually copyright and produce a play, right?
Sure, that's possible.
Doctor, you also mentioned on direct examination that there was a grammatical mistake in this script, right?
Well, there was that same grammatical mistake in both scripts, sir.
Exactly, but you don't know if that grammatical mistake was there on purpose, do you?
No, I don't know the reason why a grammatical error would be there.
So you don't know if it was there because someone was trying to create a realism or a specific vernacular for a character, do you?
Well, that would be two people trying to create the same realism or the same vernacular for that character in separate plays.
Doctor, I'm just asking what you know. You don't know if that was in the mindset of the person who wrote this monologue, do you?
Right, I don't know if they intended to make that grammatical error or not.
So, Doctor, I just want to be absolutely clear for the members of the jury. You can't tell us definitively, one way or another, whether whether Jesse Parks ever saw Alex Taylor's script before Trifecta's play was produced. Can you?
Sure, that's right.
You can't tell us one way or another whether Matt Garcia ever saw Alex Taylor's play before the debate was produced. Can you?
You're correct about that, yes.
Can't tell us if a single Trifecta employee ever saw Miss Taylor's script before their play was produced.
That's correct as well, yes, sir.
Thank you for your time, Doctor. I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you.
No redirect examination, Your Honor. May Dr. Rosenthal step down.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Your Honor, may we take down this easel?
You may. Wish to call your next witness?
The plaintiff calls Devin Harris.
Thank you. You okay, Mr. Harris?
Yes, of course.
You may proceed.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Of course. Hello, my name is Devon Harris.
What do you do for a living, Mr. Harris?
I am an actor. I came here from Turkey to get my big break.
So what have you been in?
A lot of auditions. It is going to happen soon.
So what are you doing for work in the meantime?
Oh, I drive the car, like Uber, but my company's name is Zip. And I get to set my own hours, so if I ever get called back for audition, I'm already in the car.
I'd like to talk about this case.
Of course.
Did you recognize that woman sitting in the purple shirt and pearls?
I do. This is Miss Mac Garcia. She's creative director at Trifecta.
How do you know Miss Garcia?
She was my boss. I worked there 3 or 4 years ago.
Do you remember the last time you saw Matt Garcia?
I do. I remember the exact day. September 2, 2016.
How do you remember that exact day?
Well, it is not every day you get to drive a celebrity, even in this city.
What celebrity was that?
The Jessie Parks.
Sir, just for the record, who's Jessie Parks?
She's the author of the biggest play in the world, The Debate.
How did you end up driving Jessie Parks that night?
Well, I was working and I get a call to go to the Trifecta building and pick up Jessie and Miss Mac.
Well, what happened after those two people, Jessie Parks and Matt Garcia, got into your car?
Not very much at first, but then I noticed they are talking about the debate and how lucky they are to have it just fall into their laps.
What did Jessie Parks say to that?
Well, Miss Mac said that she cannot believe Alex Taylor wrote the best play in Midlands and just left it there for her to take, and Jessie just said she cannot believe it either.
What happened next?
Well, after that, I take them to their destination and I drive home to clean the car. And when I do, I find something in Jessie's seat. It is a flash drive.
So what did you do?
I plug into my computer to see what's on.
What happened when you put that flash drive into your computer?
I take a screenshot of what I see.
I'm showing opposing counsel what's been marked for identification as Exhibits 21 and 22. May I approach?
Yes.
I'm handing Mr. Harris the same.
Thank you.
Sir, do you recognize what I just handed you?
I do. This is the flash drive I find and I give to the attorneys. And this one, number 22, is the picture I take on the computer.
We offer Exhibits 21 and 22 into evidence.
No objections, Your Honor.
All right, they're admitted.
Sir, this screenshot you took, it has a Word document called the argument.
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is testifying.
Your Honor, I was leading into a question right
You
there.
were certainly leading. You want to rephrase?
I can, Your Honor.
Thank
Move
you.
to strike.
It's,
Thank you, Your Honor.
I don't think there was an answer, but go ahead.
Could you tell the members of the jury what we're looking at on Exhibit 22?
Yes, when I plug the flash drive in, this is what I see on the computer. It is Word document named The Argument.
When Jessie Parks and Matt Garcia were in your car, did they ever say the name of the play they were talking about?
No, they just call it Alex Taylor's play.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you.
May I proceed with cross-examination?
You may.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Great. It's a sunny day.
So you said that you're an actor, right?
Of course, this is my greatest passion.
But your career, it hasn't really taken off yet.
Soon.
All right. Well, before it takes off, Mr. Harris, I'd like to talk about what you did in the past. Is that all right?
Of course.
Let's talk about the start of your career in the entertainment industry.
Sure.
You actually got an internship working for Trifecta Entertainment in your junior year of college. Isn't that true?
That's correct. With Miss Mac.
You thought that Trifecta Entertainment was one of the best studios in all of Midlands.
Oh, yes.
You told us you desperately wanted to work for their live theater division. Isn't that true?
That's right.
And sir, you actually got a full-time job working for the company, right?
I did.
But you only were in that job for about a year. Isn't that true?
That's true. I get let go.
Exactly. You were fired from the company, right?
Yes.
Matt Garcia was the person that let you go.
Yes.
Sir, when she let you go, she told you you hadn't been working hard.
She did.
Told you hadn't written a good script the entire time you'd been there.
Yes.
And sir, the truth is not a single one of your ideas actually had turned into a play.
Not yet.
So sir, you're working for the best studio in all of Midlands. You want your career to take off, and none of your work is making it big.
That's right.
After you got fired from the company, sir, you actually had some trouble finding a new job. Isn't that true?
For a while, yes.
You interviewed for a number of different positions?
Objection, Your Honor. I just asked that he be able to finish his answer before opposing counsel asks his next question.
That's fair.
I apologize, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Mr. Harris, you were saying?
Yes, I'm just saying for a while, it's very difficult industry.
Sure, so you tried to get a number of different positions, right?
That's correct. Many auditions.
But you didn't get any offers.
Not yet.
You actually had one of your interviewers tell you that there were concerns from your previous employer about your work ethic, right?
That's true.
Your previous employer, that was Trifecta Entertainment, right?
Yes.
And you thought that it was Matt Garcia telling people lies about you. Isn't that true?
For that one time, I did, yes.
Sir, that made you pretty furious, didn't it?
Well, about that time, I was upset, yes.
And now you're here in court testifying voluntarily against Matt Garcia. Isn't that true?
No, I'm not against.
Well, sir, you're on the plaintiff's side of the room. Isn't that true?
I'm on this side.
And you see that Matt Garcia, she's on the other side, right?
She's over there, yes.
So, sir, now you drive for Zip, the ride-sharing company. Isn't that true?
I do. This is where I drive the car.
On direct examination, you talked about a ride you gave to Matt Garcia and Jesse Parks. Isn't that right?
That's true.
You said that was on September 2nd, 2016, correct?
It is.
But sir, you actually left out one detail about the timeline of events. You remember doing that?
No.
Sir, on September 1st, 2016, you gave a ride to the plaintiff, Alex Taylor. Isn't that true?
Oh, that's true, yes.
She told you all about this lawsuit.
Yes, I was very surprised. I'm
Told-
only hearing good things about the debate until then.
Told you she was suing Matt Garcia for copyright infringement.
That's what she said, yes.
Your old boss.
Yes.
The person who had fired you from a job that you could have made it big in the industry.
Well, I'm still trying, but yes.
Well, sir, I know you're still trying, but let's talk about what happened in that car ride on September 2nd before you get there.
Sure.
You claim that in that car ride, Matt Garcia and Jesse Parks just said that they took Alex Taylor's play?
That's what Miss Mack said.
Sir,
Yes.
there were only 3 of you in the car, isn't that right?
That's right.
And Matt Garcia and Jesse Parks, they were only sitting a couple feet away from you. Isn't that true?
Right. Miss Mack was sitting next to me in the passenger seat, and Jessie, she's in the one in the behind.
Okay, so sir, you're telling us that they're sitting a couple feet away from you. Matt Garcia is literally to your right-hand side, this far away. And she made this statement in front of someone she used to know?
Yes, I guess.
You're telling us she was sitting next to you, a former employee who she'd worked with, and she just made this statement in front of you?
Yes.
Sir-
I'm saying what I heard.
The truth is, after you spoke with Alex Taylor, you had decided to go undercover. Isn't that true?
No.
You didn't decide to start investigating people around Trifecta?
No.
Sir, you actually bought a fake wig and wore it around in your car. Isn't that true?
Oh, yes. This is what I do when I drive the car. It's to practice my American roles.
It was after you spoke with Alex Taylor that you were driving around with this fake wig,
Well, I always drive around with this.
and that is when you claim that you had this conversation with Matt Garcia and Jesse Parks. Isn't that true?
No, I did not speak to them. I just drive them.
I'm sorry, sir, that's when you're claiming they had this conversation.
Right.
Now, you also talked about a flash drive. Do you remember doing that?
Yes.
May I retrieve the flash drive from Mr. Harris?
Certainly.
Yes, sir. You claim that Jesse Parks dropped something while you were in the car with her. Isn't that true?
Well, I found this flash drive in the back seat where Jessie was sitting.
But sir, when you actually saw something fall out of her pocket, and you didn't realize what it was at the time. That's what you told us.
That's right. When she first got out of the car, it looked like something fall. I think maybe gone or something.
But sir, you claim you only found this hours later after that actually happened. Isn't that
Oh.
true?
No, that's incorrect.
Well, sir, This flash drive, you've actually got several flash drives like this that are identical to this one. Isn't that true?
Well, that was incorrect. I find it just a minute later when I'm cleaning the car.
But sir, you've actually got several flash drives that are identical to this one in your home. Isn't that true?
That's right. Trifecta gives them out when you're working there.
Exactly. Every employee at Trifecta gets a flash drive that looks like this.
When I was working there,
You were
that
an
was the case.
You were an
Okay.
employee.
Your Honor.
Okay, the
I apologize.
counsel, you need to let him finish his answers.
Yes, Your Honor. So, sir, you had a flash drive like this, several of them, in fact.
That's true.
And,
Yes.
sir, this flash drive, it isn't labeled in any way, is it?
It says Trifecta on it.
But it doesn't say Jesse on it, does it?
No, Trifecta.
It doesn't say Parks on it.
No, still just Trifecta.
May I approach and retrieve the screenshot?
Certainly.
Sir, in this document,
This one?
yes, sir, in this document right here, this is what you claim was produced when you plugged that into your computer?
Yes, that's the one.
Sir, the title of this flash drive, it says New USB. Isn't that true?
Sorry.
It says New USB.
Yes, that's what it says.
And on this flash drive, you don't see any documents from Jesse Parks, do you?
Well, it says the argument dot document.
I know it says the argument, sir, but you don't see any files of work from Jesse Parks, do you?
No, all I know is what was on it, and then I take a screenshot of what I see.
Thank you. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you. Redirect?
No, Your Honor. May Mr. Harris step down?
You may. Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Your Honor.
May I approach to retrieve evidence?
Good luck to you.
I'm trying.
Yes, you may approach.
This one?
Yes, please, sir.
Yes.
Thank you.
With that, Your Honor, the plaintiff rests its case in chief. May we have a 5-minute recess before the defenses?
5 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor.
The plaintiff's half of the 33rd National Championship Final is in the books. University of Virginia versus Yale University. Along with Ian Lampert, Jonathan Woodward back here with you from our studio above the room where the final round is happening. A little bit of feedback as we come live on the audio up here in the studio. But let's go through and talk about sort of your overall impression. Opening and the directs and crosses of the first three witnesses. What was your sense? Let's start with Virginia. What was your sense, takeaway overall of those performances?
I think that Virginia is playing it very safe. They are incredibly structured in everything that they do. When we rewatch this, we're going to see lots of use of the rule of three. During the opening, they say follow the blank, and follow the blank. By the way, that is a very well-worn trope within mock trial. I think that was in the Harvard versus Yale final round as well. Then you see during the expert testimony, there was also more and more of that. There was 3 things that they were attempting to focus on during that round. I think that it was a very traditional and safe mock trial. Their presentation was slow and measured. I think that paid dividends in the case of some cross-examinations, because this was perhaps a faster and more aggressive Yale team than either of the previous 2 iterations of Yale. They were very fast and aggressive.
My takeaway was that I largely agree with you when it comes to Virginia's performance. The word I think I used last year was clinical, and I think I would use that term again this year. Slow, deliberate, lots of pauses between the question and the answer, lots of pauses within the questions and within the answers. I think the difference between how that compared with Yale last year versus this year is this is clearly a much younger Yale team.
Yes.
You got the sense at times that they were trying to be Daniel Stern. They were trying to be Raymond Zhu. How successful they were, I think, varied at times. Certainly, I think the cross of the first witness, Ms. Bays, was very fast at times, seemed to be sort of rushing, and it seemed a little bit like you could tell it was a more experienced Virginia squad versus perhaps a less experienced Yale squad. But the second 2 crosses seemed to maybe build back up a little bit more momentum. But I think Virginia was also hampered by the fact that they were running out of time on their direct.
I actually think they made very good use of time on that direct. I know that at the very end, I think they finished at the last possible second, but it felt to me like a complete direct examination. They got in the damning statement that they needed to at the very end of it.
Yeah.
And I also think that it doesn't seem that short because of how long all of Yale's crosses were. I actually thought that within the second cross-examination conducted by Andy Parker of Yale, there was a really good segment, perhaps it was 1 to 2 minutes long, where he was hammering the witness and taking total control, and then it just kept going. And I think what was a 10 inside there is probably going to be brought down by what was around it. There was sort of a wash back and forth.
Yeah.
Got to pick your battles.
Let's go back to the opening statements. Obviously, that's something that sort of sets the trend for the trial in many ways. The judges calibrate their scoring often with those two opening statements. We had Sabrina Grandi from UVA doing the plaintiff's opening. Very classic Virginia-type opening. Strong theme of follow the script. Went through the rule of threes with the computer, the copy, and the cab. At the same time, there was nothing flashy about it. But you could that's an opening you could show to a group of high school or college students starting mock trial and say, this is a template of what an opening should look like, and you can build off this. That's sort of the takeaway that I took from that opening. What were your thoughts?
I agree with you. I actually think that the opener here, who I believe won an All-American award on the other side of the case, that was a nice combination of clinical but also real. In other words, I didn't buy her as a fake attorney. I could imagine an attorney who behaves like that, and I think that's the concern when you're as clinical and structured and formulaic as Virginia tends to be.
Right. Now, Michael Burns was the opener for Yale University. The theme there, a theme that I heard from a different team at a scrimmage on Thursday night with, again, maybe a slightly different wording. I'm guessing it was the theme that other teams used this weekend. You can't steal your own idea. A little bit higher energy, not necessarily over the top or anything excessively flashy about it, but you could definitely tell a difference in the energy level and the style between Ms. Grandi and Mr. Burns in those two opening statements.
One thing I'd say about Mr. Burns is he engaged more with the judges who were sitting in the front of the room, whereas Ms. Grandi, she was just looking at the judges on the side. However, from the perspective at least of the live stream in front of me, Mr. Burns seemed far more erratic, moving with less purpose. I didn't get as clear of his structure to his opening. I got sort of an argument at the front, then I had some narrative presenting the defense side of the story,
Right.
And then at the very end, sort of the repetition of that rhetoric and discussing the burden that is the plaintiffs. He did the classic moving over, and he taps the plaintiff's side. We've seen that in many, many final rounds now. It's another classic trope.
So I don't know that there's necessarily a clear advantage in the opening. I would certainly say that Virginia's maybe a slightly more polished professional presentation. Not to say that Mr. Burns wasn't professional, but like you said, it was a little bit more erratic all over the place. But I don't know that the openings in and of themselves in this trial were something that is going to determine how the judges are necessarily going to calibrate the scoring for the rest of the round. We're being given the signal to wrap it up, that they're already wrapping up the break downstairs. So real quick, what are you looking for in the Yale performance in the second half in terms of what they might do differently than Virginia did?
I'm curious if they're going to use fewer demonstratives. I'm curious if they're going to be as slow and ponderous, or if the witnesses will try to match the energy of the third Virginia witness, who seemed to get the audience on his side completely near the end.
And keep in mind that Yale is not calling an expert witness, and there definitely seemed to be a lull in the trial when the professor was testifying for Virginia. It was a very professorial character on the one hand. On the second hand, it seemed like some of the audience members were beginning to sort of drift off. It was just a very long professorial type of direct, and I don't know how the judges are necessarily going to relate to that. On the other side, we're going to have more character witnesses, more eyewitnesses from Yale, so we may see a very distinct shift in that here in the second half.
The last thing to note, I think, is witness control. That is, this judge showed that she is very open to non-responsive objections. Motion to strike, they're being non-responsive. None of the Yale cross-examinations touched on that at all.
Right.
I think Virginia could shut down fighting witnesses far more if they utilized that.
Right. So it looks like we're going to send it back downstairs for the second half, and we're going to be starting with the direct examination of Mac Garcia, the party representative for Trifecta Entertainment. Now I'm being told that we're actually not starting back up right now, so we're going to talk a little bit more about the first half of the trial. So let's go back and talk about the first direct. Alex Taylor being portrayed by Deanza Cook from UVA. Very likable personality, sort of not too much in the background block, talked about a small town girl from Tennessee. Very likable, very calm, didn't get flustered at all about anything. She faced a very aggressive, rapid-fire cross-examination and never really broke that calm, cool, collected character and persona, and I thought that was very, very effective.
I thought she was excellent, and I didn't expect to find her as good as she was, because during cross-examination, a lot of those very scripted and structured directs can fall apart because they get swept up in the energy of the cross-examiner. She did not.
Another thing I noted, to me as a practicing attorney, that I noticed that I thought Alexandria Piacenti from UVA did very, very well was making effective use of the record when talking about Yale's demonstrative. We had that battle over whether Yale's demonstrative was argumentative because Ms. Bays placed that question mark on there. Ms. Piacenti described that demonstrative for the record, described for the record what it was that Ms. Bays was doing with the demonstrative, and I think that's something that the scoring jurors are going to pick up on and really credit Ms. Piacenti for, because she didn't lose her cool, made a very appropriate description for the record, which is something that obviously in real world, if that was going to become an appellate issue, that description is something you would want to have in there.
From a witness perspective, another thing that I loved about Alex Taylor was that she preempted many of the next questions Yale was about to ask. I think when you play back this video, you're going to see that she'll make an answer that is yes, and then go on to describe something else. The something else was the next question, and in this instance, possibly as a result of the relative youth of the Yale cross-examiner, she ended up just asking that same question, making it seem like it was a waste of a question.
Right. Now we're being given the signal a second time that they are ready downstairs for the second half of the trial, so we will send it back down to the Girardi courtroom here at Loyola Law School, the final championship round presented by Girardi Keese, and we'll send it downstairs for the second half of UVA versus Yale.
I'm excited.
Thank you. You may be seated. Is the defense ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the defense calls Ms. Mac Garcia to the stand.
Thank you. Ms. Garcia.
And as she takes the stand, permission to set up a demonstrative?
Certainly.
Does that look like it will be visible to all the members of the bench?
I think we're fine. Thank you.
Fantastic. May I proceed?
Please.
Could you introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Yeah, hi. My name is Michal Garcia. But most people can't do the "h" sound, so they just call me Mac.
What do you do for a living, Miss Garcia?
Well, I'm the head of creative development at Trifecta Entertainment.
How did you end up in that position?
I mean, I got started as a writer, so I got my MFA in dramatic writing from NYU Tisch. After that, kind of bounced around in the city, did a couple projects, ended up getting involved with the team that developed the show The Good Wife for CBS, and so that's how I kind of transitioned to the development side specifically.
What sort of work does Trifecta do?
I mean, we're basically what's called a holistic production company, so we do, film, television, live theater, really the whole gamut.
And at Trifecta, Miss Garcia, what's your job on a day-to-day basis?
Essentially my job is to sort of generate ideas for new content. In practice, that means I spend about 90% of my time just kind of pacing around my office and then going home and pitching crazy ideas to my husband. Although, actually, my husband's in medical school now, so I've taken to kind of just calling up every single member of my mahjong team sequentially.
And once you have an idea, Ms. Garcia, what happens?
When I have an idea that I think, has real promise, that's when I'll kind of pitch it to my writers on staff and assign it to a team. So, I'll basically just give them my whole outline, everything I've been working on, which usually includes, basic skeletons so that they understand the structure of the play, character monologues, dramaturgical notes, any research I've been doing. I give it all to my writers, and then they're the ones who develop it fully.
Now, Ms. Garcia, you've been here in court today, and you've heard that Alex Taylor is claiming that Trifecta copied her play.
Objection, Your Honor. Did you leading? He said, "You've heard."
All right,
I'm happy to rephrase, Your Honor.
please.
Ms. Garcia, did you copy Alex Taylor's play?
No. I got the idea for this show back in 2012, and then Jessie Parks, who's a writer on our staff, she's the one who brought it to life.
So let's start back in 2012.
Sure.
How'd you first come up with this idea?
So we've been having a lot of conversations at Trifecta about this idea of immediate theater, so how to get the audience not to be just kind of passive observers, but to actually play an active role in taking ownership of the show. Back late 2012, I was reading one of those, those choose your own adventure books, and I realized that was something just totally new that I had never seen in theater. I'd never seen a show where the audience actually got to control how the narrative was going to play out.
So what exactly was your concept for this audience interaction in the play?
It wasn't fully developed at that time, but initially the conception was going to be there was going to be sort of two characters, and they would have a confrontation in the first act, and then that would kind of rise to a climactic moment. And then in the second act, before the second act began, the audience was going to take a vote on what was going to happen, and then that would determine one of two diverging second acts based on the outcome of that vote.
What did you do with that concept?
At that point, I was just kind of sketching out different ideas, playing around with different concepts. I was trying to find, what plot I was going to use to fit this basic skeleton that I had.
Did you tell anyone about your plan to write this interactive play?
Oh yeah, when I'm first in those preliminary stages, I'm crowdsourcing with everyone that I know. So, I was talking to my husband, my hairdresser, this kid Tim, he's my neighbor's kid, he's 8 years old, but he's hilarious. And I was just bouncing ideas off of everyone.
Ms. Garcia, you're saying that you're doing all this preliminary work. Do you keep it in any specific place?
Yeah, I put everything that I write, I type it all up, I keep it in my office. And then the stuff that I like the most, the material that I'm most interested in using, I put it in I call it my great ideas folder, which I basically just call it that to kind of shame myself into productivity, which is actually surprisingly helpful, I would say.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that I'm showing opposing counsel what have been marked as Exhibits 3 and 4. Permission to approach the witness.
You may.
Thank you.
Ms. Garcia, do you recognize what I'm handing you?
Okay, yeah, so this is my great ideas folder. And then, do you want me to the second one?
Yes, please.
And then, this is the skeleton that I drafted for my first conception of the debate.
Have either of them been changed or altered in any way?
No.
Your Honor, defense offers Exhibits 3 and 4.
3 has been admitted already. Any objection to 4?
None.
All right, Exhibit 4 is admitted.
So, Ms. Garcia, it's 2012, like you're saying. You're sort of playing around with these ideas. What happens?
So early 2013, that's when Governor Walton began his re-election campaign, and I just started thinking about his whole backstory, because, the last time he ran for governor, right, he was accused of murdering his opponent. And, I just started to think there's a person who has just a really interesting, complex inner life that I thought would be, an incredible character to use to explore this skeleton that I had.
Now, how did that all fit in with your idea to do an interactive play?
So, what I was thinking at that time was that it was going to be this kind of, psychological thriller murder mystery where the audience would be able to vote on, whether they thought this fictional politician was guilty. But then I kind of realized that, I didn't really want to do an Agatha Christie style murder play about a death that actually happened. That just didn't feel right to me, really.
So what did you do, Ms. Garcia?
I was still really excited about this whole audience vote idea. I really wanted to explore that. So I I pitched it to one of our writers on staff, Jesse Parks. I basically said, here's everything I've been thinking of. I gave her my entire outline, and I said, is there any way that we can kind of salvage this thing?
Why'd you decide to give it to Miss Parks specifically?
Oh, Jesse's, she's totally brilliant. And we collaborate really well together because I tend to find that we, are on the same wavelength a lot of the time, but approach problems from very different perspectives. So I was hoping she would see the merits of what I was trying to do, but figure out a way to fix it. And I think what she did with it was genius.
Ms. Garcia, we talked a good deal about how you helped develop Trifecta's play. I want to shift gears and talk about Miss Taylor's play.
Sure.
Did you work with her at Trifecta?
I remember she was one of our interns 4 summers ago, but we didn't work very closely together.
After this lawsuit was filed, did you have a chance to review her script?
Yeah, you, my attorneys, you showed it to me. I didn't read the whole thing word for word, but I am familiar with it, of course.
When you had a chance to look over her script, did you find any of your ideas?
Yeah, the whole structure was all there.
Well, let's talk about the structure that was there. Your Honor, let the record reflect that I'm flipping over the demonstrative. Ms. Garcia, we've heard that in both your play and Alex Taylor's play, Act 1 culminates in an argument. Mm-hmm. When did you come up with that idea?
That was, initially when I drafted up the skeleton. That was part of my first conception of the play.
And when did you draft up that skeleton?
That was late 2012.
Excuse me. Ms. Garcia, we've also heard that in both plays there was an audience vote at intermission. Was that in your 2012 skeleton?
Yeah, that was the whole impetus for this entire project.
Ms. Garcia, we've also heard that in both plays there's a vote at intermission that determines the 2 separate Act 2s. Was that there?
Yeah, that was all there.
And we've also heard that both plays had contrasting emotional tones between those 2 Act 2s. Was that in your 2012 skeleton?
Yeah, again, the diverging acts, they were going to contrast each other.
Oh, Ms. Garcia, we've also heard today about 2 monologues that were pretty similar. Do you remember that?
Yeah, when you did the whole textual similarity analysis.
I just want to be clear for the members of the jury. When did Trifecta develop their monologues?
Well, when I was initially, outlining the whole concept, I wrote just a ton of stuff for, different parts of the show. I usually write character monologues so that I get a sense of, how these people think, how they speak, how the whole thing comes together. And I gave the whole outline to Jesse. Some things, I guess, got incorporated, some didn't, but I definitely remember writing material for the top of Act 2, because that was the most important part of the show.
So did you write all that before or after Miss Taylor arrived at Trifecta?
Well, that was, again, that was when I was first drafting stuff, so that was early 2013. She interned in the summer of 2013, so it was before.
Where did you keep those original monologue drafts?
Well, the ones that I liked the best, like I said, I put in my great ideas folder.
Well, Ms. Garcia, as far as you know, did Miss Taylor ever have a chance to see that great ideas folder?
Yeah, so there were at least 2 times, from what I can remember.
When was the first?
Well, that was actually when Alex was interviewing. I remember I stepped out of the room. I think I was printing something or grabbing something, and when I came back, she made this kind of weird joke about the folder, which is why I remembered it.
And the second time, Miss Garcia?
Well, that was actually when I left my folder at my hairdresser's. I remember I went home and totally freaked out because I realized I didn't have my folder. And then I came back into work the next week, and that's when Alex gave it back to me.
Do you remember when exactly that was?
Well, I was at the hairdresser's before my husband's birthday, so that was May 31st of 2013.
Miss Garcia, did you ever have a chance to see Miss Taylor's script?
No. I had no idea she was even writing this play until this lawsuit.
Thank you, Miss Garcia. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Would opposing counsel like me to deconstruct it?
You can take it down. May I begin?
Please.
Afternoon, Miss Garcia.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to start by talking about those monologues you just mentioned on your direct examination.
Sure.
Now, you've been sitting in this courtroom for the entire trial, right?
That's true, I have.
You've been sitting just right over here, haven't you?
Yes, next to Mr. Parker.
So, when Miss Grandi came up here and gave her opening statement, you heard her talk about those monologues.
That's true. I did.
And then when Miss Taylor got up on direct examination, you heard her talk about those monologues as well, right?
Right. I heard her say that she wrote them.
And certainly you remember Dr. Rosenthal using those big enlargements of the monologues, right?
Yes, I definitely remember that.
But then, ma'am, we took a recess, didn't we?
That's right. Just now.
We went outside the courtroom.
Yes.
We were out there for around 5 minutes, right?
Sounds about right to me.
Then we came back in,
Yeah, well, we're here now, so yes.
and then you took the witness stand, didn't you?
Right. That's what happened. Yes.
But Ms. Garcia, you know that this lawsuit was filed 9 months ago, right?
That sounds about right to me.
And after this lawsuit was filed, you wrote an affidavit for the case, didn't you?
That's right. I sat down, my lawyers told me to say what I knew.
You signed that affidavit in February.
Yes.
That's about 2 months ago, right?
Yes.
Ma'am, before you wrote your affidavit, you were told that you needed to be truthful in it, right?
Of course, yes.
Ma'am, before you gave that affidavit, you were told to include everything that might be relevant to your testimony today.
Yes, that's what I was told.
But isn't it true, ma'am, today, sitting in that witness stand is the first time you've ever claimed you had anything to do with writing those monologues?
I don't think that's true. I mean, I know I talked in my statement about how I was the one who was responsible for coming up with the idea for the show and for outlining it and giving that outline to Jesse.
Showing opposing counsel what purports to be the witness's affidavit. What line will you be referring to? The document in its entirety. May I approach?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Ma'am, this looks like your affidavit, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is me.
On the first page, that's your name up at the top.
Yes, Matt Garcia.
If you flip to the very last page of it, page 5, you'll see your signature there at the bottom, right?
Yes,